Francis. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Maulik. And it's such a great pleasure for me to be with you. And always an honor to be with you.
No, it's honor is all mine. One of the reasons I was excited to have you on this podcast is because you are such a multifaceted personality. You have achieved tremendous success in writing books. You have written some 24 books. You are the go-to inspirational speaker here in the country, in the region. You are a business consultant, and I can go on and on and on. But what I find fascinating about your background, Francis, is that success was not always handy to you. Back during your high school years, from what I researched on you, it took you 6 years to complete your high school.
That's true. And of all the multitude and voluminous information about you, why did you have to choose that one? And yes, it took me 6 years to finish high school. As I would more apt to say, I earned my PhD in high school. Yeah. So PhD now means passing high school with difficulty.
There we go. I love it.
Corrected me and said, no, Francis, for you, PhD means permanent head damage. And I guess that's right.
Now, what was the reason behind it? Because you seem like a very disciplined person to me, someone who is focused on what you want to achieve, and then you go after it. What happened in high school?
Looking back, I now realize why it took me 6 years to finish high school. Number one, first of all, I developed this victim's mentality, feeling like, I'm in a perpetual pursuit for coolness. I wanted to be cool. So I thought that by behaving like a rebel and trying to do things that are different from what the rest of the guys are doing, I'm cool. Today, I just realized I should have bought me a cooler. That's equivalent to the same thing, right? And that attitude, and here's the key, Maulik, I get bored easily. So when the instructor and the teacher goes into a monotone thing, I zone out. And I'd rather spend the rest of my time doing something productive, like listing down all the songs of the Beatles, all the titles, and stop daydreaming. And that's what got me into trouble.
And how did you get out of it?
Well, I was dubbed, and I was given the reputation as the dumbest kid in school. Can you believe that? Now, at that time, my girlfriend, who would become my wife, she was the first year high school when I was second year high school, when we both became second year high school. So when the students are laughing, I said, because I waited for her. Not really. So I flunked. She graduated, went to college, and I repeated fourth year. And for the first time in my life, I felt so ashamed. And I said, oh my goodness, this is a big embarrassment to her and her family. So when I went to college, I said, maybe the only way I can make up for my 2 years of stupidity is to do something different, something unique that I've never done before. What if I studied? And so I studied hard, and I said, for me to make up is not to just graduate college, but I'm going to prove all these guys that I'm not really the dumb person that they thought me to be. So the only way I can recover is to graduate with those Latin honors attached to my name. And God is merciful. After 4 years of hard work, I did graduate top in my college.
Wow. That's amazing. And did she ever give you an ultimatum, by the way?
Well, what happened is that Lilia, my wife, has a lot of aunties. And the aunties are mostly coming from China, right? So they're the traditional, very talkative, very critical aunties. And they have an emergency meeting. I was the agenda. Can you imagine that, Maulik? And they were pursuing Lilia and convincing her to drop me. And the basic premise of that meeting was that Are you sure you're going to be giving the rest of your life to a loser? He can't even pass high school. Now, you can hardly argue with that kind of logic. But that got me angry. And I said, I'm going to prove to these aunties that they were wrong by doing something different. And I did.
You didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs, right? When did you develop this desire to control your own destiny and go through that process of going from traditional employment to becoming your own boss?
I would say that one's ability to observe and then absorb, and then from that observation and absorption, we convert that into a lesson and process it, is extremely important. For instance, the thing that prompted me to enter business was motivated by two things: envy and jealousy. So background ethnic Chinese. My house was situated exactly 72 and a half steps away from the Chinese high school that I attended. And that was the reason why I was late every morning, Maulik. So my alarm clock was predicated on the national anthem. Can you believe that, right?
You can afford it, right? Yeah.
Yes. And I would look at my Chinese classmates and wondered, how come these guys are blessed with wealth? Their family owns businesses. These guys never had to worry about money. And then I look at my dad, and my father was a very faithful, hardworking bookkeeper, couldn't be an accountant because he was Chinese citizen. My mother never experienced work and employment and never experienced business. So that was my situation. One day, my dad lamented the fact that he was losing clients. And I said, why? He says, you know, son, when I started in this business, there was very few Chinese English-speaking accountants. That's why I virtually monopolized all the Chinese businesses as my clients. But over the years, these Chinese people, because of their money, they started having families and they enrolled their children into accountancy courses. And now they don't need me anymore. So I find myself losing clients. I never have forgotten that.
Wow.
The lesson I learned from that, Maulik, is that I will never put myself in a position of stasis such that I would become irrelevant. I will keep on moving and to keep upgrading myself, because I don't want to lose client and I don't want to lose opportunity. And that prompted me to enter into the world of business, but mainly because I was jealous and envious. And I thought that going to business would be the best way for me to create wealth. That's how I started with that kind of mind frame.
And it was not overnight, right? I mean, after your schooling, you spent years working at a couple of different companies in different roles. Yes. I think your first role out of college was being an executive assistant to the president. Tell us about that.
Well, because I graduated top in my school, any position that is given me with a word executive attached to that, I would grab it. Call me an executive driver, I'm going to get it. So when people ask me, what's your job now? I'm an executive, right? And so being cool was still in my agenda. But, you know, being an executive assistant afforded me to the inside information of the president. But my basic job then was to keep quiet, listen, sharpen his pencils, fix his coffee, and to be an all-around guy. But I was at that time very curious. So what got me there was that I started observing and absorbing the lessons. I said, if work begins at 8 and finishes at 5, why would most people come in at 10 to 8 and then prepare to leave at 10 to 5? What if I come in a little earlier and then go home at around 6:30 and 7, and meanwhile start reading the memorandums and the communications in the offices that's happening, try to study the organizational chart and try to get myself familiarized with the people, the VIPs there, and to put me in a strategic position to know more compared to the other guys who are working there. So that got me to work harder, know more, get myself the initiative to offer my services. And within 1.5 years, I think I got 3 promotions then. So then that got me going. But still, the pay was very little, not enough for me to enter business.
So you left that job, and I believe you joined another company. Is that right?
Yes. Those were amazingly, the reason why I left that job, it was because they were promoting me to the position of factory manager of a concrete producing firm. One morning when I went to the factory, I opened the curtains and I looked around and I saw nothing of other color apart from gray. Cement was gray, hollow blocks was gray, aggregate stones and rocks were gray. And I said, at my young age, there's no color here. Now, amazingly, things fall in place. This was the time when the industry of RTW, or garments production, became the norm. And I said, I'm fascinated with this. I love clothes, I love colors, I love fashion. So I left that company and went down and started my new job as somebody fixing show windows and changing mannequins' clothes. And that's where I got started in the garments business. But I really did that on purpose because I wanted to study that industry from the ground up.
How long did you do that? And at what point did you say, you know what, I know enough about this industry. I think I can start my own company. I can find the right partners to launch my own venture.
You can enter into business if you're given 2 things. Number 1, you've got a rich father who will leave you with a rich inheritance in terms of money or business. So just take over, right? I don't have that. So the other one now is this. I don't have money to start a business, but I'm going to increase my knowledge and competence and build a name for myself in the industry so that people are going to talk about me. So I've got this competence and knowledge and a reputation, and there will always be people who's got excess money with a lack in knowledge, looking for people with excess knowledge with a lack of money. And then we're going to form a team together. So they got me to be an industrial partner in the garments company that we set up. That got me started now into business. So that was my capital, my knowledge, nothing else. Yes.
At what point did you say, I could actually become a motivational speaker?
It was not intentional, but when I was in charge of doing the marketing and the selling of our newly formed products and garments, I again observed and I absorbed. I looked at all the other salespeople presenting their products. You have these multinational companies that have been trained in the way to fold their pants and they present their products and then talk about the virtues and exalt the positive things about their product. And I said, that's not enough. What I'm going to do is I will continue reading. I will continue understanding not only about my products, but what about the industry? What if I understand a little bit about marketing, creativity, advertising, and forecasting future trends? So when I go now to present my product, I don't just present the virtues of my products. I will now begin to educate the merchandisers and the procurement officers about the forthcoming trend. So I was adding value to that officer who now brags and boasts about that additional knowledge to his or her boss. So they love hearing me. I never knew that was the very start of my becoming a speaker and a trainer. But that was what I was doing. So I told myself, I will refuse to be a salesperson. I will be a consultant. I'm going to provide so much knowledge and value to the people I do business with so that they will love hearing from me because they benefit from what I can share. So that means I got to work overtime. I'm going to be reading more books. I'm going to be learning more stuff. I'm going to be asking more questions. So I'm going to increase my competence so that I have an ammunition so that I can provide for my clients.
And what I understand is that when you became a public speaker, it took you almost 10 years of doing 120 speeches a year for free before you
Yes.
started getting clients who are willing to pay for it. And I think that's a very important concept for all of us to understand that, it will take a while for you to bring your name out, to build your brand.
Legend, or might be reality, has a story about Michael Jordan loving basketball so much. He, at that time, was the only NBA player that was allowed to have a stipulation in his contract in NBA that he can play in any courts he would want to play in.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, I was told that professional players were not allowed that because their franchise was controlled by the association. And Michael Jordan termed it as for the love of the game.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, for the love of sharing ideas.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually did 12 years, averaging 120 talks, invitations from schools. I would pay out from my own pocket. At that time, I was earning a little bit more. I'll pay for my own transportation. I'll pay for my own hotel expenses, go there, talk to the teachers, talk to the students and the parents for the love of the game.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this reward and meaning and fulfillment I had, even though I spent for it. And now, looking back today, it was actually sharpening.
Mm-hmm.
I've made a lot of boo-boos. I've made a lot of mistakes. Sometimes I'm still embarrassed just thinking about it. But it was sharpening my craft.
Yeah.
And then when 2005 came, and together with my partners, we organized a learning event for John Maxwell, and it became so successful. Maxwell looked at us and he said, "Hey guys, apart from Singapore, this is the most successful event I've ever seen anybody organize. Why don't you guys represent me and my training program?" So at that point, I had to fly to Atlanta to be given their imprimatur, to be licensed, accredited. When I came back now, I became a professional speaker. So I started charging, and I started charging very high.
Mm-hmm.
I have had 12 years of experience now. So that was my start, right?
What has been the biggest mistake you have made so far in your life, and what have you learned from it?
It's a combination of two factors. Trusting people too much and refusing to listen to my wife.
I can hear your daughter laughing.
Some people say, "Francis, why are you listening to your wife when your wife doesn't know business?" I said, "Yeah, she doesn't know my business, but she knows me." She could instinctively tell me,
Mm-hmm.
She could say, "Hey, Francis, why don't you double check what's happening with you and your partners?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem to make sense to me." And I would at that time say, "Don't feed my mind with negative things in my work. I need to be positive." She was right all along.
Mm-hmm.
So there were unethical things that were being done now.
Mm-hmm.
And I finally learned my lesson. And as one very good quotation would say, "Trust in God, but lock your car." And then, when you trust people, you still have to monitor things that are happening, right? And so
Yes.
the lesson I have learned greatly from that is people change.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody changes. So it's good to listen to the advice of those who really love you and who are close.